The great hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with voices from across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their special chairs, each one made for their different body types. The air itself was mixed to keep everyone alive, a careful balance of gases that took engineers years to perfect. Commander Zethkar stood at the center podium, his massive frame casting shadows across the first row of seats. His thick, armored skin showed the scars of countless battles, and his forearms moved as he spoke. He was Cytherian, from a world where the storms never stopped and the gravity could crush most beings. "We gather today to celebrate a great truth," Zethkar said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "We are the survivors. We are the chosen ones who conquered the worst worlds in the galaxy." To his left, the Veltar delegation sat in their special cooling units. Their crystal-like bodies reflected the chamber's lights in beautiful patterns. They came from a world so cold that water turned to stone, where the seas were liquid methane and the warmest day would freeze most species solid in seconds. The Sock representatives coiled in their heated sections, their serpent-like forms moving with deadly grace. Their world was a burning desert of glass and acid rain, where only the fastest and most poisonous creatures survived. They had evolved to strike like lightning and kill with a single bite. Each species carried the marks of their terrible homes. The Cytherians could survive in gravity that would flatten normal beings. The Veltar could live in conditions that would freeze others instantly. The Sock could move faster than the eye could follow and resist toxins that would kill entire populations. Dr. Lara Knox walked to the speaker's platform, her crystalline Veltar form shimmering as she moved. She was the Federation's top expert on life in the galaxy, and her research had taken her to thousands of worlds. In her hands, she carried a data tablet that would change everything. "Council members," she began, her voice clear and cold-like. "Winter Wind, I present to you the results of 300 years of research. The mathematical proof that we are alone in our strength." The hall fell silent. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. "Hellworlds," she continued, "are planets so dangerous that they kill almost everything that tries to live there. Only the strongest, the most adaptable, the most dangerous species can survive to reach intelligence. The odds of one such world existing are tiny. The odds of two are almost impossible. The odds of three... She paused, letting the numbers sink. The odds of 3 Hellworlds producing intelligent life in the same galaxy are so small that they might as well be 0. We have found the mathematical proof. We are the only Hellworlders in the galaxy. We are alone in our power." The chamber erupted in cheers. Cytherians roared their approval, their voices shaking the walls. Veltar clicked their approval in harmony. Sock hissed their agreement in unison. Commander Zethkar raised his forearms for silence. "Dr. Knox speaks truth that we have always known in our hearts. We are the apex predators of the galaxy. We survived what no other species could survive. We conquered what no other species could conquer. The soft garden world species look to us for protection because they know we are their betters." The truth was simple and clear. Every other species in the Federation came from easy worlds. Planets with perfect weather, gentle gravity, and no real dangers. They had evolved in comfort and safety, which made them weak. They needed the Hellworlders to protect them from the real dangers of space. "No other species has faced what we have faced," Zethkar continued. "No other species has been forged in the fires of true hardship. We are the warriors, the survivors, the strong. This is scientific fact." The vote was unanimous. The Council officially declared that Hellworlders were the rarest form of life in the galaxy, and that the 3 species represented in the Federation were the only ones that existed. It was written into the official records, taught in schools, and broadcast. Across 1,000 worlds, the celebration continued for hours. Representatives shared stories of their homeworlds, comparing scars and survival tales. The Cytherians spoke of hurricanes that lasted for months. The Veltar told of ice storms that could cut through metal. The Sock described desert winds that carried acid strong enough to dissolve bone. Each story was a badge of honor. proof of their superiority over the soft species that filled the galaxy. They were the chosen ones, the survivors, the apex predators who had earned their place at the top of galactic civilization. But even as the celebration reached its peak, something was happening at the edge of the galaxy that would change everything. Lieutenant Commander Nash Williams sat at his sensor station aboard the Deep Space Monitoring Station Vigilance. He had been watching the same empty space for 3 years, looking for signs of hostile activity or unknown phenomena. It was boring work, but somebody had to do it. His screen had been showing the same pattern for months. Empty space, distant stars, the occasional asteroid. Nothing interesting ever happened at the galactic edge. Until today, a small blip appeared on his sensors. At first, he thought it was a malfunction. The object was moving too fast for any known propulsion system. It was also too small to be a proper starship. Most importantly, it was heading directly toward Federation space. Williams ran the scan again. The object was definitely real, definitely moving and definitely not following any known flight pattern. Its hull appeared to be made of simple steel alloys, primitive compared to Federation technology. The propulsion signature suggested some kind of fusion drive, centuries behind current Federation standards. He opened a communication channel to the nearest Federation patrol fleet. "This is Vigilance Station to Fleet Command. We have an unknown contact approaching from Galactic Edge. Single vessel, primitive technology, heading for Federation space at impossible speed." The response came back within minutes. "Acknowledged, Vigilance. Transmit all data to Federation Command. We're dispatching a first contact team." Williams looked at his screen again. The mysterious ship was still approaching, still moving at speeds that should have been impossible for its primitive technology. On the hull, barely visible through the long-range sensors, he could make out strange markings and what appeared to be letters in an unknown language. As the image cleared, he could read the identifier painted on the side of the vessel, UES Defiance. The ship was unlike anything in the Federation database. Its design was functional rather than elegant, built for strength rather than beauty. It looked like something designed by engineers who expected to be shot at, hit by asteroids, and forced to operate in the worst conditions imaginable. But what worried Williams most was the speed. The ship was moving faster than anything its technology should have allowed. Either they had some kind of propulsion system that Federation science had missed, or they were willing to push their equipment far beyond safe limits. Both possibilities were disturbing. Inside the approaching vessel, Captain Jake Morrison checked his navigation displays one more time. The long journey from Earth was almost over. After 18 months of travel, they were finally approaching the edge of what appeared to be a massive galactic civilization. "Status report," he said to his crew. "All systems operating within acceptable parameters," replied his engineer, Lieutenant Kevin Chun. "Fusion drive is running hot, but nothing we can't handle. Communications are picking up signals from dozens of sources," added his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Williams. "Multiple languages, but the computer is starting to identify patterns. Give us a few more hours and we should have basic translation capability." Morrison nodded. They had known this moment would come eventually. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they were about to find out. The approaching signals painted a picture of a vast, organized civilization. Hundreds of worlds, dozens of species, all united under something called the Galactic Federation. It was more than humanity had dared to hope for, but Morrison was a cautious man. He had survived 30 years in space by never assuming anything was friendly until proven otherwise. The universe was a dangerous place, and Earth had taught its children to be ready for anything. "Maintain course," he ordered. "And keep all weapon systems on standby. We're going to make history today, one way or another." Behind them, Earth continued its orbit around a yellow star, unaware that its children were about to change the galaxy forever. The Federation flagship Eternal Dominion hung in space like a metal mountain. Its dark hull stretched for over 2 kilometers, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. The ship had been built to intimidate, and it succeeded. Few species could look at it without feeling small and helpless. Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge, His forearms crossed as he watched the approaching human vessel on the main screen. The primitive ship looked like a toy compared to his massive warship. Its steel hull was scarred and patched, clearly built by a species that expected to be hit by things. "Pitiful," muttered Sub-Commander Kretak, adjusting his battle armor. "Look at that crude construction. They must be centuries behind us in technology." Dr. Lyra Knox studied the readings from her sensor station. Her crystalline form flickered with interest as data streamed across her displays. The propulsion system is indeed primitive. Basic fusion drive, nothing more. But they're achieving remarkable speed with such simple technology. "Garden worlders often surprise us with their ingenuity," Zethkar said dismissively. "They have to be clever because they're too weak to be strong." The first contact team assembled in the main conference room. Besides Zethkar and Dr. Knox, the group included Captain Sevic of the Salk Diplomatic Corps and Lieutenant Velinara, a Veltar environmental specialist. Each represented the finest their species had to offer. "Standard first contact protocol," Zethkar announced. "We show them our strength, assess their capabilities, and determine if they're worthy of Federation membership. Given their primitive technology, this should be straightforward." The human ship responded to their hail within minutes. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and steady, speaking in a language the computer quickly began to translate. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defiance. We request permission to meet and establish diplomatic relations." "Certainly," Zethkar replied, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered star systems. "Though I should warn you, our environmental standards may be challenging for your species. We Hellworlders are adapted to conditions that would kill most Garden World inhabitants." There was a pause, then something that sounded like laughter. "We'll manage, Commander. Request permission to bring a small diplomatic party aboard." "Granted. But you'll need full environmental suits. Our atmosphere, gravity, and temperature are set to accommodate multiple Hellworlder species." "Understood. We'll be ready in 1 hour." Zethkar turned to his team. "Prepare the standard intimidation display. Full battle dress, environmental hazards active, gravity set to 1.8 standard. Let's show them what real strength looks like." An hour later, the airlock cycled open. The Federation team expected to see bulky environmental suits, the kind that Garden World species needed to survive in anything more challenging than perfect conditions. Instead, 3 humans stepped out wearing simple, lightweight gear that looked more like work clothes than survival equipment. The first human was a man in his 50s with gray hair and steady eyes. He moved with the confidence of someone who had seen danger and survived it. Behind him came a woman, smaller but with the alert posture of a trained soldier. The third was a younger man carrying what appeared to be scientific equipment. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Dominion," Zethkar said, his massive form towering over the visitors. "I am Commander Zethkar of the Catherian Empire. This is Dr. Lyra Knox, Captain Sevic, and Lieutenant Velinara. We represent the Galactic Federation." The lead human stepped forward without hesitation. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison, representing Earth and the United Earth Coalition. This is Lieutenant Sarah Williams, our military advisor, and Dr. Kevin Chun, our science officer." Dr. Knox's sensors were already scanning the humans. "Your homeworld readings are unusual. Oxygen at 21%, gravity at 1.0 standard, temperature. Variations within normal parameters. You appear to be from a garden world." "That's what the numbers say," Dr. Chun agreed. "Then you're Garden Worlders," Captain Sevic hissed, his serpentine form coiling with what might have been amusement. "Your species evolved on a paradis world. How interesting that you developed space travel so quickly." The humans looked at each other. Lieutenant Williams spoke up. "With respect, Captain, I think there might be some confusion about what makes a world a paradise." Zethkar gestured toward the conference room. "Please let us show you the worlds that forged the Federation's founding species. Perhaps you'll understand why we're considered the galaxy's apex predators." The conference room's holographic display activated, showing 3 worlds in stunning detail. First came Kitharos, Zethkar's homeworld. The planet spun slowly, its surface covered in eternal storms. Lightning bigger than continents crackled across skies dark with hurricane clouds. The gravity readings showed 2.3 times standard, enough to crush most species. Kitharos, Zethkar said proudly. Eternal storms, crushing gravity, winds that can shatter steel. Only the strongest survive to adulthood. We are forged in battle from the moment we're born. Next came Veltar Prime, Dr. Knox's frozen home. The planet was a blue-white marble covered in ice, with seas of liquid methane and temperatures that would freeze most species solid instantly. The warmest day on record reached minus 180 degrees Celsius. Veltar Prime? Dr. Knox said, her crystalline voice ringing with pride. A world of eternal winter where the seas are methane and the air itself can kill. We evolved to survive in conditions that would destroy most life. Finally, the display showed Sok, Captain Sevik's desert world. The surface was a nightmare of glass sand and acid rain where temperatures reached levels that would melt metal. Storms of chemical fire swept across continents, leaving only the strongest and most adaptable alive. Sok, the captain hissed, where the rain burns us through bone and the stand cuts us like blades. We became fast because slow meant death. We became poisonous because weak meant extinction. The humans studied the displays carefully. Captain Morrison nodded with what looked like professional interest. Impressive worlds. They definitely shaped strong species. Indeed, Zethkar said. These are Hellworlds, the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. They produce the strongest species, the apex predators, the survivors. Garden worlds like yours create soft species that depend on perfect conditions. Dr. Chun looked at Lieutenant Williams. Sarah, would you mind showing them our presentation? Williams activated a small device and the room's display changed. Instead of the carefully controlled images most species would share, raw footage of Earth began to play. The first image showed a hurricane from space, a spiral of destruction bigger than most moons. This is Hurricane Patricia, Williams explained. Wind speeds of 350 kilometers per hour. It destroyed everything in its path for hundreds of kilometers. The image shifted to show a tornado, a spinning column of destruction that carved through landscapes like a cosmic drill. Then came footage of an earthquake, the ground itself splitting open and swallowing buildings whole. We get about 500,000 earthquakes per year, Dr. Chun said calmly. Most are small, but the big ones can move mountains. Literally. The display showed volcanic eruptions that sent ash clouds around the planet, blocking out the sun for months. Then came footage of tsunamis, walls of water hundreds of meters high that could destroy entire coastlines in minutes. Your planet experiences these events regularly? Dr. Knox asked, her voice uncertain for the first time. All the time, Morrison replied. We've learned to predict some of them, but Earth is always trying to kill us in new ways. The footage shifted to show human settlements. Cities built directly on fault lines, knowing that earthquakes would eventually strike. Coastal towns that faced tsunami warnings as part of daily life. Villages at the base of active volcanoes, living with the constant threat of eruption. You build in these dangerous locations? Zethkar asked. We build everywhere, Williams said. We live in deserts that would kill most Federation species in hours. We've built cities in frozen wastelands, underwater, in the hearts of active volcanic regions. We don't have a choice. Every place on Earth is dangerous in some way. The display showed human activities that made the Federation delegates shift uncomfortably. Humans jumping from impossible heights with only cloth to slow their fall. Others diving to crushing ocean depths where the pressure would kill most species instantly. Some climbing vertical rock faces using only their hands and feet. This is recreation? Captain Sevik asked, his voice uncertain. Some of it, Chun confirmed. We call it extreme sports. Some humans seek out danger for fun. But the real shock came when the display showed Earth's wildlife. Creatures that hunted in coordinated packs armed with fangs and claws. Predators that could strike faster than the eye could follow. parasites that could control the minds of other creatures, venomous animals whose toxins could kill in minutes. The footage showed humans sharing their world with all of this, living alongside predators that saw them as prey, dealing with diseases that could wipe out populations, surviving in ecosystems where everything was trying to eat everything else. "We're not even the apex predator on our own world," Morrison said quietly. "We're persistence hunters. We evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We're not the fastest, strongest, or most dangerous. We're just the most stubborn." The Federation Council had seen the footage and heard the claims. But 300 years of certainty about their own supremacy could not be overturned by a simple presentation. Commander Zethkar stood before the assembled representatives, his scarred armor gleaming under the chamber's lights. "The humans make interesting claims," he announced to the council. "But claims are not proof. We need to see their capabilities with our own eyes. I propose a series of tests." Dr. Lara Knox stepped forward, her crystalline form shimmering. "The tests will be fair and scientific. We will measure their abilities against known standards. This is not about humiliation, but about proper classification within our hierarchy." Captain Jake Morrison listened to the proposal with calm attention. The tests would take place on each of the founding Hellworlds. First Kitharos, then Veltar Prime, then Salk. Each world would challenge the humans in different ways. "We accept," Morrison said simply. "When do we start?" The first test began 3 days later on Kitharos itself. The human shuttle descended through the planet's eternal storm clouds, buffeted by winds that could tear apart most Federation vessels. Lightning the size of cities crackled around them, and the crushing gravity pulled at every bolt and rivet in their ship. Commander Zethkar waited at the landing platform, surrounded by his finest warriors. They wore their ceremonial battle armor, designed to showcase the strength needed to survive on their homeworld. The Kitherian delegation expected to see the humans emerge in the finest environmental suits the Federation could provide. Instead, Captain Morrison stepped out of the shuttle wearing simple clothes and breathing equipment, no gravity support systems, no protective armor, just basic gear to help him breathe the local atmosphere. "The gravity here is 2.3 times your world's standard," Zethkar warned. "Are you certain your equipment is adequate?" Morrison took a few steps, adjusting to the heavier conditions. "It's about twice what we experience on Earth, but our athletes train under similar conditions. I should be fine." Lieutenant Sarah Williams emerged next, moving with the fluid grace of someone trained for combat. The crushing gravity that would cripple most species seemed to barely affect her. Within minutes, she was performing practice maneuvers that would be impossible for most Federation species even in their home conditions. Dr. Kevin Chun was the last to exit the shuttle. He immediately began examining the local plant life, handling specimens that required protective gear for native Kitherians. His hands showed no protection beyond simple gloves, yet the acidic compounds that could burn through Kitherian armor had no effect on his skin. "How is this possible?" Sub-Commander Kretak whispered to his leader. "They should be crushed by the gravity alone." The humans spent 6 hours on the surface, exploring areas that even native Kitherians considered dangerous. The wind speeds reached 400 kilometers per hour, strong enough to throw a Kitherian warrior off his feet. The humans bent against the wind and kept walking when the test ended. Morrison's only comment was, "Reminds me of a bad day in Kansas." The second test took place on Veltar Prime, where the methane seas and brutal cold had killed countless exploration teams from other species. The temperature readings showed minus 190 degrees Celsius, cold enough to freeze most substances solid. Dr. Knox waited with her delegation at the research station, watching through reinforced windows as the human shuttle landed on the frozen surface. The Veltar had prepared their finest thermal protection gear, environmental suits that could keep a being alive in the planet's deadly cold. The humans emerged wearing what looked like heavy winter clothing. No environmental suits, no heating systems, just layers of fabric and simple breathing masks. "This is actually quite pleasant," Morrison commented as they walked across the ice. It reminds me of Antarctica during winter. The humans not only survived, but seemed to enjoy the conditions. They demonstrated techniques for building shelters from ice, finding water sources in the frozen landscape, and creating tools from the materials around them. Techniques that most Federation species had never learned because they relied on technology instead. Lieutenant Williams showed the Veltar how to move efficiently across ice and snow, using Earth methods developed over thousands of years. Dr. Chen collected samples of the local life forms, creatures so adapted to cold that they would die in normal temperatures. Your species naturally developed these survival skills? Dr. Knox asked, her voice filled with something that might have been respect. We had to, Chen replied. Earth has frozen continents that make this place look warm. Humans have lived there for thousands of years. The Veltar delegation watched in amazement as the humans spent 12 hours on the surface, exploring regions that challenged even the crystalline natives. When they returned to the shuttle, they seemed relaxed and comfortable. Beautiful world, Morrison said to Dr. Knox. The ice formations are spectacular. The final test came on Sok, the glass desert world where acid rain fell like knives and the heat could melt metal. High Sok Seshek coiled in his underground city, watching the surface monitors as the human shuttle descended through a chemical storm. They will not serve, he hissed to his advisors. The acid will eat through their primitive equipment. The heat will boil their blood. The storm above was particularly violent that day. Winds carried glass particles that could cut through armor, while rain filled with chemical compounds ate through almost any material. The surface temperature reached 180 degrees Celsius, hot enough to kill most life forms instantly. The humans emerged from their shuttle wearing protective suits, but the equipment showed obvious signs of the harsh conditions. Steam rose from their gear as the acid rain struck, and their movements suggested they were fighting against the environment, but they never stopped. They never retreated. They pushed forward into conditions that would send even Sok warriors running for shelter. Your species, High Sok Seshek observed through the communication system, they do not know when to retreat. William's voice crackled through the static, distorted by the storm but still clear. Retreat isn't really in our vocabulary. We prefer tactical advancement in a different direction. The humans spent 8 hours on the surface during the worst storm in months. Their equipment suffered damage, their suits showed wear, but their determination never wavered. They collected samples, mapped terrain, and completed every task they had set for themselves. When they finally returned to their shuttle, High Sok Seshek met them at the landing platform. His serpentine form towered over the humans, but for the first time in his life he felt like he was looking up at them. How? He asked simply. Morrison removed his damaged helmet, his face streaked with sweat but his eyes still bright. We've learned that giving up means dying, so we don't give up. The real revelation came during the joint training exercises that followed. The Federation had arranged a series of war games to test how human forces would integrate with their military structure. The exercises would take place in a variety of environments, each designed to favor different species. The results challenged everything the Federation thought they knew about military effectiveness. In high-gravity combat situations, Kitherian forces dominated as expected. Their strength and endurance gave them overwhelming advantages. But when the gravity changed randomly during the exercise, they struggled to adapt. Human forces treated the shifting conditions as a minor inconvenience. Veltar units excelled in cold environment combat, their crystalline forms perfectly adapted to frozen battlefields. But when the temperature started fluctuating between extreme cold and moderate warmth, they lost coordination. Human units adjusted their tactics without missing a step. Sok warriors were lightning fast in familiar desert conditions, striking with precision and speed that amazed their human counterparts. But when the terrain changed from desert to forest to urban environment, they needed time to adjust their strategies. Human forces seemed equally comfortable in all conditions. This should not be possible, Dr. Knox muttered, reviewing the data from her command post. Specialists should always outperform generalists in their areas of expertise. They do, Dr. Chun explained, watching his people work alongside Federation forces. In any single environment, your species are superior to ours. But Earth never let us specialize. We had to become good at everything or die. The most telling exercise was the final one. The simulation randomly shifted between different planetary environments every few minutes. Desert to Arctic to jungle, to urban to underwater to zero gravity. The changes came without warning, forcing all participants to constantly adapt. Federation forces, despite their individual excellence, struggled with the rapid changes. Units optimized for one environment lost effectiveness when conditions shifted. Coordination broke down as different species tried to adapt to conditions that favored others. Human forces treated as if it were just another day. They moved between environments with casual efficiency, their tactics flowing like water to match whatever challenges appeared. When the gravity shifted, they adjusted. When the temperature changed, they adapted. When the terrain transformed, they kept fighting. How do you do it? Commander Zethkar asked Morrison after the exercise ended. The massive Catherian warrior looked genuinely puzzled. 6 months had passed since the humans arrived at Nexus Prime. The small embassy they built was simple compared to the grand structures of other species, but it had become the most visited building on the planet. Representatives from across the galaxy came to study these strange new Hellworlders who broke all the rules. Captain Jake Morrison had been promoted to Admiral and now served as humanity's voice in the Galactic Council. His calm manner during crisis situations had earned respect from species that once dismissed humans as primitive garden worlders. Even Commander Zethkar now sought his advice on difficult matters. The first real test of this new partnership came when the long-range sensors detected something troubling. The Void Seekers had returned. Dr. Lyra Knox stood before the emergency council session, her crystalline form flickering with urgency. The Void Seekers are launching their largest assault in decades. 3 colony systems are under immediate threat. Intelligence suggests they have over 200 ships this time. The Void Seekers were nomads who lived in the empty spaces between stars. They raided Federation colonies for resources and slaves, using hit-and-run tactics that had frustrated military commanders for centuries. Their ships were fast, their crews desperate, and their strategies impossible to predict. "We will deploy the standard response," Commander Zethkar announced. "Heavy Catherian cruisers for direct assault, Veltarized ships for environmental advantage, and SOC fast attack vessels for pursuit operations." Admiral Morrison raised his hand. "Request permission to deploy a human vessel to assist with the defense." The council chamber fell silent. The humans had only one warship in Federation space, the U's Resilience. It was smaller than most Federation vessels and built with the same primitive technology as their first contact ship. "Admiral," Captain Sevick hissed politely, "your ship is as appreciated, but these are experienced raiders. Perhaps it would be best to observe from a safe distance." Morrison smiled. "We appreciate the concern, Captain, but we'd like to contribute more than just observation." The Federation fleet assembled at the edge of the Kepler system, where 3 colonies faced destruction. The force was impressive by any standard. 30 Catherian heavy cruisers, their thick armor gleaming in the starlight. 20 Veltar ice ships, designed to operate in the coldest regions of space. 15 SOC fast attack vessels, built for speed and precision strikes. Among them sat the human cruiser Resilience, looking small and fragile next to the Federation giants. Its steel hull showed the patches and repairs typical of human engineering. Built to be fixed rather than replaced, Lieutenant Commander Alex Rivera commanded the human ship. He was young for such responsibility, but his crew trusted him completely. He had earned his position by solving problems that others thought impossible. "Status report," Rivera asked his tactical officer. "Void Seeker fleet detected at the edge of the system," Lieutenant Lisa Parker replied. 230 ships, using standard raider formation. They're heading for the inner colonies. And the Federation response. Admiral Chun reports all ships ready for engagement. Standard Federation doctrine calls for direct assault on the main raider force. Rivera studied the tactical display. The Void Seekers were using the Kepler system's asteroid field and electromagnetic anomalies to confuse Federation sensors. Their ships darted between cover points, making targeting difficult for the larger Federation vessels. "They're going to use the environment against us," Rivera said quietly. "The Federation ships are too big to maneuver effectively in that field." The battle began exactly as he predicted. The Cytherian cruisers, built for strength and direct combat, struggled with the raiders' mobility. Their heavy weapons could destroy any Void Seeker ship with a single hit, but they couldn't get clean shots through the asteroid field. The Veltar ice ships were designed for specific environmental conditions. In open space, they were deadly efficient. But the Kepler system's varied magnetic fields and radiation zones disrupted their targeting systems. The SOC, fast attack vessels, were the quickest ships in the Federation fleet. They could match the raiders for speed, but they couldn't coordinate effectively with their slower allies. When they pursued raiders into the asteroid field, they lost contact with the main force. "Federation fleet is taking casualties," Parker reported. "The raiders are using the asteroids for cover, then striking at our flanks." Rivera watched the battle unfold on his screens. The Federation forces were brave and skilled, but they were fighting according to established doctrine. The Void Seekers had faced that doctrine for decades and learned to counter it. "Unknown contact bearing 045 Mark 12. His sensor operator called out. Rivera glanced at the display without apparent concern. "Looks like a feint. The real attack will come from the asteroid field in about 30 seconds. "How can you tell?" Parker asked. "Pattern recognition. These raiders have been using the same basic strategy for decades. They send a small force to draw attention, then hit from an unexpected angle. Watch." 30 seconds later, a massive force of Void Seeker ships emerged from behind a large asteroid, striking directly at the Federation's exposed flank. The Federation commanders scrambled to respond, but their ships were too slow to reposition quickly. The Resilience was already moving. Rivera had anticipated the attack and positioned his ship to intercept. The human cruiser dove into the asteroid field, using the same cover that had protected the raiders. "All hands, brace for combat maneuvers," Rivera announced. "We're going." Hunting. The human ship moved through the dangerous field with casual efficiency. Where Federation vessels struggled with the obstacles, the Resilience seemed to dance between them. Rivera's crew treated the chaotic environment as just another navigation challenge. "How are they doing that?" Commander Zethkar asked over the communication channel. His massive cruiser was too large to follow the human ship into the dense asteroid. "Field experience," Rivera replied, his ship weaving between rocks that would have crushed smaller vessels. "We've been dodging space debris since we left Earth. This is actually pretty easy compared to the junk around our homeworld." The human tactics confused both sides. Instead of following established Federation doctrine, the Resilience fought like the raiders themselves. It used the asteroids for cover, struck at unexpected angles, and disappeared before enemies could respond, but there was a crucial difference. The raiders had learned to fight against Federation predictability. They had no experience dealing with opponents who fought like they did, only better. "Raider squadron attempting to flank the Veltar ice ships," Parker reported. "Intercept course laid in," Rivera replied. "Time to show them what real persistence hunting looks like." The Resilience emerged from the asteroid field just as the Raider squadron moved to attack the Veltar ships. But instead of engaging in direct combat, the human ship began what looked like a retreat. The raiders took the bait and pursued, thinking they had found easy prey. They chased the human ship deeper into the asteroid field, where their superior numbers should have guaranteed victory, but Rivera wasn't retreating. He was leading them into a trap of his own making. The human ship knew exactly where every asteroid was, exactly how the magnetic fields affected targeting, exactly where the radiation zones would disrupt communications. One by one, the pursuing raiders found themselves isolated, confused, and vulnerable. The Resilience picked them off with precision strikes, using the environment as a weapon against enemies who thought they understood it. Raider squadron eliminated, Parker reported. No damage to our ship. Outstanding, Rivera replied. Now, let's go help the main fleet. The pattern repeated throughout the battle. Where Federation forces struggled with the chaotic environment, the human ship thrived. It seemed to treat the asteroid field as home territory, moving with a confidence that amazed allies and terrified enemies. How did you know where they would attack? Admiral Chun asked over the communication system. They're predictable once. You see the pattern, Rivera explained. They've been using the same basic tactics for decades because they work against Federation doctrine. But we don't follow Federation doctrine. What doctrine do you follow? Survival. We do whatever works. The battle ended with the Void Seekers in full retreat. Their forces were scattered and demoralized. Their carefully planned assault turned into a disaster. The Federation fleet had taken moderate casualties, but the human ship emerged without a scratch. In the aftermath, the Federation military began asking uncomfortable questions. How had a primitive human ship succeeded where advanced Federation vessels struggled? How had untrained humans outfought experienced raiders in their own preferred environment? Dr. Knox published her findings in a report that shook the foundations of Federation military thinking. Human tactical doctrine, she wrote, is based on adaptability rather than specialization. They do not train to fight in specific conditions, they train to fight in any conditions. Commander Zethkar read the report in his private quarters, his forearms working to process data that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. They don't follow our rules because they never learned our rules, he said to himself. They learn their own rules on a world that doesn't have rules. The implications spread beyond military matters. 1 year had passed since the humans first arrived at the edge of Federation space. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The council chambers on Nexus Prime buzzed with a different energy now, as representatives from dozens of worlds worked together in ways they never had before. Admiral Jake Morrison stood before the assembled council, no longer a curiosity or potential member, but as an equal partner in galactic civilization. His presence had become as natural as any of the founding species. Commander Zethkar sat to his right, the massive Catherian warrior now one of his closest allies. The integration programs are showing remarkable success, Dr. Lara Knox reported to the assembly. Her crystalline form flickered with what might have been satisfaction. Mixed species training exercises have improved combat effectiveness by 40% across all participating units. The changes had been dramatic. Federation military doctrine, unchanged for centuries, was being rewritten from the ground up. Human advisors worked with each species to develop new training methods that emphasized adaptability over specialization. Catherian warriors, once focused purely on direct assault, now learned to use terrain and environment as weapons. Veltar forces practiced operating in multiple temperature zones instead of just extreme cold. SOC units trained for coordinated attacks with slower allies, learning patience to complement their natural speed. The humans have taught us that strength comes not from mastering one challenge, Commander Zethkar addressed the council, but from learning to face any challenge. Captain Sevick coiled in agreement. Our species have become more than we were before. We remain ourselves, but we are also something new. The philosophical changes ran deeper than military matters. For 3 centuries, the Federation had defined itself by being the galaxy's apex predators, the survivors who stood above all other species. The arrival of humans forced them to reconsider what survival really meant. We thought we were the strongest because we survived the worst worlds, Dr. Knox explained to a gathering of xenobiologists. But humans showed us a different kind of strength. They survived by refusing to accept that any world was the worst. The humans had established colonies throughout Federation space, but their settlements were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of massive cities protected by shields and barriers, humans built communities that worked with their environments on the ice world of Glacier Prime. Humans lived alongside Veltar colonists in structures that adapted to temperature. Changes. When storms came, the buildings flexed and shifted instead of standing rigid against the wind. In the desert regions of burning sands, human settlements used techniques learned from both Earth's deserts and sock survival methods. They created water from air, built cooling systems from local materials, and thrived in conditions that killed most other species. Most impressive were the orbital habitats that humans constructed in the dangerous asteroid fields around dying stars. Other species saw these regions as no man's lands, too chaotic for permanent settlement. Humans saw them as neighborhoods. They live everywhere, Lieutenant Velinara observed during a tour of human settlements. They don't ask if a place is safe or suitable. They just ask how to make it work. But the true test of this new partnership came when long-range sensors detected the approaching threat that had been building at the galaxy's edge. Unknown vessels, displaying technology that didn't match any known species, were moving toward Federation space. The ships were massive, larger than anything in the Federation fleet. Their hulls showed no identifying marks, and their energy signatures suggested power sources beyond current understanding. Most disturbing of all, they were coming from the void between galaxies, from empty space where nothing should exist. First, contact protocols have failed, reported Communications Officer Torres from the Deep Space Monitoring Station. The vessels do not respond to any form of communication. They maintain course directly toward our core systems. Admiral Morrison studied the incoming data in the Federation's war room. The enemy fleet numbered in the thousands, each ship larger than a Federation battlecruiser. Their formation suggested military organization and hostile intent. Recommendations? He asked the assembled commanders. Standard defensive deployment, suggested Admiral Kretak of the Catherian fleet. Heavy cruisers in front, support vessels behind, establish a defensive line at the system's edge. The unknowns have superior numbers and apparent technological advantage, Dr. Knox pointed out. Standard tactics may not be sufficient. Admiral Morrison looked at the tactical display, his mind working through possibilities that others hadn't considered. What if we don't give them a standard battle? Explain, Commander Zethkar requested. Every species in the galaxy fights. According to predictable patterns, Catherians use overwhelming force. Veltar employ precision strikes. Sock rely on speed and coordination. These unknowns probably studied our tactics before they came. Lieutenant Commander Rivera, now promoted to Admiral after his success against the Void Seekers, nodded in understanding. They're expecting us to fight like the Federation always fights. But we're not just the Federation anymore. The plan that emerged was unlike anything in military history. Instead of a single massive fleet following unified tactics, they would deploy mixed species units throughout the system. Each group would combine the strengths of different species while following human-inspired adaptive strategies. The key is unpredictability, Morrison explained to the joint commanders. We don't establish a pattern. We react to what they do, not what we plan to do. When the unknown fleet arrived at the edge of Federation space, they found something they hadn't expected. No massive defensive line, no predictable formation, no clear center of command. Instead, they faced dozens of small mixed-species groups scattered throughout the system. The first unknown ships moved forward, clearly expecting the Federation fleet to respond according to established doctrine. When no coordinated response came, they paused, apparently confused by the lack of a clear target. They're scanning, reported sensor operator Martinez aboard the human flagship, trying to identify our command structure and battle plan. Let them scan, Morrison replied. They won't find what they're looking for because it doesn't exist. The battle began when the unknowns finally committed to an attack pattern. Their ships moved in perfect formation, executing maneuvers that suggested advanced artificial intelligence or hive mind coordination. They struck where they expected the Federation's command center to be. They found empty space. The real attack came from everywhere at once. Catherian human units struck from asteroid cover, using brute force combined with tactical unpredictability. Veltar human groups attacked from the system's cold outer regions, their coordination enhanced by human adaptability training, Sock human forces hit fast and disappeared, refusing to engage in prolonged combat. They struck vital targets and vanished before the unknowns could respond, using human persistence hunting techniques combined with sock speed. Enemy formation is breaking down, Rivera reported from his mixed species squadron. They're trying to respond to multiple threat types simultaneously. The unknowns had prepared for a conventional space battle against a predictable enemy. Instead, they faced controlled chaos directed by species that had learned to thrive in unpredictable conditions. But the real surprise came when human ships began doing something no one expected. Instead of maintaining safe distances, they closed to point-blank range with enemy vessels, using ramming tactics that horrified and amazed their allies. Admiral Morrison, the UES Defiance is on a collision course with the enemy flagship, came the panicked report. Acknowledged, Morrison replied calmly. Captain Chun knows what he's doing. The human ship struck the unknown vessel at full speed. Its reinforced hull designed to survive impacts that would destroy more sophisticated ships. The collision disabled both vessels, but the human crew survived while the unknown ship went dark. They built their ships to ram things, Dr. Knox observed with something approaching awe. They actually designed their vessels for deliberate collisions. Earth taught us that sometimes you have to hit your problems head-on, Morrison explained. So we built ships that could survive hitting things. The battle continued for 18 hours, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. But gradually the unknowns began to withdraw. Their perfect formations had been shattered by unpredictable tactics. Their advanced technology had been countered by primitive but effective strategies. Most importantly, they had encountered something they couldn't understand or predict. An enemy that fought not according to established rules, but according to no rules at all. Enemy fleet is retreating to the galactic edge, reported Admiral Rivera. They're maintaining formation but showing signs of damage and confusion. In the aftermath, the Federation counted their losses and their gains. The casualties had been significant, but they had faced an enemy with superior technology and numbers, and forced them to retreat. More importantly, they had done it together. We won because we learned to be more than we were, Commander Zethkar told the Victory Assembly. The Catherians provided strength, the Veltar gave precision, the Sock offered speed.